Hello guys, for IT Elective 3 or your game analysis and design, our topic for Module 6 is regarding Breakout tutorial using GameMaker Studio language. So for the objectives at the end of this lesson, students should be able to first, learn what is GameMaker language. 2. Learn how to use GameMaker language inside GameMaker Studio. 3. Learn the basic mechanics of the game Breakout. 4. Learn how to develop a basic version of the game Breakout. So first, let's have an overview of your GameMaker language. GML or GameMaker language is the native programming language for the GameMaker Studio game engine. So GML gives you more flexibility and control than the standard actions that are available through the drag and drop interface. There are a number of different places where you can use this language to create and control your game. So one of those examples will be your scripts. A script is a usually short snippet of code in GML that you write to create your own functions. Next, we also have events. You can use code within object events to control the behavior and interaction of instances of those objects. You can even mix drag and drop with the code. We also have your room creation code. Each room can have a special create event specific for that room. Here, you can add the code you need and it will be run when every time the room is entered. You also have your instance creation code. As well as the code you insert into the events of an object, you can also add code to the individual instances when you place them in the room. This code will run after you create or after the create event of the object and is specific to the instance that you add it into. Next, you have your Breakout. Okay, so what is Breakout? Breakout is an arcade game developed and published by Atari Incorporated and released on May 13, 1976. It was conceptualized by Nolan, Bushnell, and Steve Bristow, influenced by the seminal 1972 Atari arcade game Pong, and built by Steve Wozniak. So this is a screenshot of the earliest versions of the game Breakout. So you have bricks in here, you have your score at the top, and you have a playable part in here. So this is what we call your bat. So basically, there will be a ball somewhere in here that you can hit using this bat. So once the ball bounces onto the bricks, it will be adding scores for you. Okay. So Breakout begins with 8 rows of bricks with each 2 row a different color. So using a single ball, the player must knock down as many bricks as possible by using the walls and or the paddle below to ricochet the ball against the bricks and eliminate them. If the player's paddle misses the ball rebound, they will lose a turn. So the player has 3 turns to try to clear 2 screens of bricks. So yellow bricks earn 1 point, green bricks earn 3 points, orange brick earn 5 points, and the top level red bricks score 7 points. The paddles reach to 1/2 of its size after the ball has broken through the red rows and hit the upper wall. Ball speed increases at specific intervals, after 4 hits, after 12 hits, after making contact with the orange and red rows. So let's start your tutorial. So we'll be creating a basic version of the game Breakout using GameMaker Studio and its GameMaker language. Okay, so let me just show you the final outcome of our game. Okay, so I have already done the game, so I'll just demo it for you. Then we'll be starting from scratch. So let's try run your game. Okay, so your final output will look something like this. Okay, so let's click the play button. Okay, so once you click the play button, you have your room. So your room consists of your score and lives board. Then you have your bricks that you need to destroy. You have your ball and you have your bat or your paddle. So the player can move the paddle or the bat using the left and right cursor of your keyboard, and you can fire the ball using your spacebar. Okay, so let's try to demo this game. Alright. So all you need to do now is to hit all the bricks and reach the highest score. So as you can see on the top part of our game, we have your score counter and your lives counter. Okay, so the ball will be bouncing down. So as much as possible, you want to avoid the ball going in the lower part of the game, or it will be deducting your lives. Okay, so the player will have 3 lives for this game. So the aim of this game is basically to have the highest score. Okay, so the game will also be recording the highest score, regardless when you open or close the game. So let's start this tutorial. So let's proceed with the tutorial. So the first thing that you'll be needing before you start the tutorial is you need to have the assets that you'll be needing for the game. So these are the images that we'll be using as sprites later for the game. So you have your background here, you have your bricks for the game, you have your score box, you have your title, we also have your play button and your ball. So let's start. So the first thing that we need to settle now is we need to create sprites that we'll be using for your game. So first, let's create your ball. So we'll be loading your sprite. So this is our ball, okay? So after loading the image, the next thing that we'll be doing is we'll be placing its origin to center and we'll be modifying its mask. So as you can see, our sprite for the ball is a PNG image, doesn't have the background, but as you can see, if we won't be editing its mask, it will be using the rectangle as its mask. So in order for us to create a accurate collision of your ball object, we need to change the shape of its mask from rectangle to ellipse. So after doing that, just click OK, OK, and click OK. Then the next thing that we'll be doing now is we'll be adding the sprite for our brick. Okay, so I'll be naming this to SPR underscore brick. We'll be loading its sprite. So you have different types or different colors of bricks that you can use under your assets folder. So I'll be using only one image. Okay, so let's say this brick number 1. Okay, then later I'll be modifying this sprite for us to have multiple bricks. Okay, so I'll be setting its origin to center. Okay, then I'll click OK. So after the ball and the brick, we'll also be creating a sprite that we'll be using for your bat. Okay, so I'll be naming the sprite to SPR underscore bat to denote that this resource is a sprite. Okay, so let's load the image. So we have this one. This is our bat. We'll click open. Okay, we put its origin to center and click OK. So lastly, we'll be doing the sprites for your wall. So I'll be naming it to SPR underscore wall. We'll be loading the image for your wall. We'll be using this one, okay, this image. Then we'll be setting its origin, or we'll be leaving its origin to 0, 0. Okay, then click OK. So after doing that, the next thing that we'll be doing now is we'll be creating an object for your wall. So you can proceed with the objects folder under your resource tree. So right click the objects folder, create an object, then we'll be naming this to obj underscore wall. Okay, so the obj prefix denotes that this resource is an object. So we'll be loading its sprite. Okay, then I'll be unchecking this visible, so we won't be showing the sprite for this one, but later we'll be doing something about its collision. Okay, so we'll be using this wall to not allow the ball to go outside the room. Okay, so then we'll just click OK. So after doing that, the next thing that we'll be doing now is we'll be creating your object for the brick. So we have obj underscore brick. Okay, we'll select the SPR brick. Okay, then next thing we'll be doing is we'll just click OK. For the meantime, I'll be editing our brick. Okay, so I'll be double clicking the SPR brick. So in here, guys, as you can see in the resource folder, we have multiple bricks. Okay, As you can see, or as you've seen in the demo, we have multiple colors of bricks that we'll be needing for the game, but we won't be loading all these bricks one by one onto your game. So what we'll be doing now is we'll be editing the mask image. So in your sprite properties, select on the edit sprite button. Okay, then this window will pop up. So as you can see, we have a sub image of your sprite. This is sub image 0. So we'll be using this one to create 4 more bricks. So to do that, what we'll be doing now is I'll be selecting this brick. Okay, and I'll press Ctrl C in my keyboard to copy this sprite and paste a copy of it. So I'll be pasting 4 copies of this image. Now what we're going to do now is we'll be changing the color of each of these bricks. Okay, so let's say for example, we'll leave image 0 as red, then we'll change the color of image 1, 2, and 3. So to do that, select the brick that you want to change its color, select the image tab, and select colorize. Now the first thing that you need to do now is, first you must uncheck, okay, the apply to all images in the sprite. So what we want to do now is we want to change the color of your bricks individually. So let's say for example, I'll be coloring this second brick as yellow. Okay, so all you need to do now is to drag the hue to your desired color. So let's say for example, I'll be using yellow as the second color. Okay, select image number 2, images, colorize. Let's have it in color green. Image number 3. Alright, so let's have it in color blue. Okay, and image number 4. Let's have it in purple. So as you can see now, we have 5 variations of the brick that you want in a single sprite. So after changing its color, or after changing the colors of your brick, what you're going to do now is to click this check mark to save your changes, okay, and click OK. After editing the sprites for your brick, let's go back to your object brick. Okay, so the next thing that we'll be doing now is we'll be adding a create event. Okay, so this is the part where we'll be using now your GameMaker language. So you can proceed under your control tab. Okay, then you have your code group. So we have this action to execute a code. So what you're going to do now is you'll be dragging this execute code into your actions, and it will be opening a new window where you can add your source code. Now, so we'll be adding our sample or our first GameMaker language codes in here. So we'll be using this code. Okay, so let me adjust that. So the first code that we have is your image speed 0. Okay, so this code will tell GameMaker Studio to not animate the sprites that we added. So as you have seen earlier, we have multiple sub-image of the sprites for your brick. So if we won't be adding this image, GameMaker will be animating those sprites. So the next that we have is image index is equal to floor. Okay, opening closing parenthesis, random number image. So this code will randomly select an image color. Okay, once you add it onto your room. So after adding your source code, what we're going to do now is click this check mark, okay, to save. Then we have your first snippet. So okay, just a reminder, guys, the codes that you have in here that are colored in green, these are comments. Okay, so I'll be leaving comments onto your source code for you able to know what are the function of the source codes. Okay, so now let's continue. So after doing this, just click OK. Then we'll be proceeding now. So what we're going to do next is we'll be creating the object for your bat. So as you can see, we have your sprite for the bat in here. So spr_bat. So let's create the object for your player bat. Okay, we'll be assigning the sprite. or its sprite, that will be the SPR underscore bat. Okay. So the next thing that we'll be doing now is we'll be creating a keyboard event. So just click the add event, select keyboard. Okay. Then we need to select what keyboard keys are we going to use, okay, to control your player bat or the paddle. So as I have shown you earlier, we have three buttons that we'll be adding for your player bat. We have your left arrow key, right arrow key, and we also have your space bar. So we'll be using the left and right arrow key to move your paddle or your bat sidewards, okay? And we'll be using the space bar to fire up the ball. So let's proceed with left. So we'll be creating the left event, then again, we'll be adding your execute a code, or execute code. So let's drag it in here. It will be opening your code editor or your GML editor. So I'll be pasting this source code. Okay, so as you can see, as I have mentioned earlier, I'll be attaching comments for you guys to know what's the purpose of these source codes. Okay, a copy of your source code, I'll be attaching a copy of your source code in the link below. Kindly check them out. Okay. So, okay, what is this source code? So, first is we have this conditional statement. So, basically, this conditional statement says that it will be checking if the bat is moving onto the left, will it collide into the wall? If it's false, okay, or if it will not be colliding into a wall, it will be moving the bat. Okay, so it will be moving onto the x-axis by 5. Okay, so we'll be doing the same with your right arrow. So for now, let's click OK. Then let's proceed in creating your second keyboard event. So we have your keyboard right. Okay, so the next thing that we'll be doing is again we'll be adding your source code. Okay, so let's drag or let's open the execute code. Then you'll have this code editor. So we'll also be placing an almost similar source code in here. So we have a conditional statement that will be checking if the bat is moving onto the right, will it be colliding a wall? Okay, if it's not, then it's gonna move your bat onto the right side. So as you can see, we've assigned a positive value in here, okay, and we've assigned a negative value for the left. Okay, so we'll be moving along the x-axis, and we'll click OK to save the changes. Then we'll be adding our third event. So the third event that we'll be doing is your space. Okay, so we'll be adding the same procedure. So we'll be adding your source code. Okay, so we have your GML editor in here. Then I'll be pasting this code in here. So what does this code do? Okay, so if we'll check, guys, so we have a conditional statement in here wherein it will be checking if the ball is not moving. Okay, if the ball is not moving, then it will be assigning a true value to the variable go. What it will be doing is it will be moving the ball. Okay, so in what direction? It will be assigning a direction using this formula. Okay, it will be setting its direction and will be assigning the speed of the ball using this variable. We have speed is equal to 5. So basically, guys, you have this variable that will be defining the direction and the speed where the ball will go, or where the ball will fire. Just click OK now. So click OK now. So as of the moment, we have your sprites, 4 sprites ready. We already have 3 objects that we've added in here. So we have your wall, brick, and your bat. Okay, so after adding the controllers for your bat or player bat or your paddle, the next object that we'll be creating is your ball. Okay, so let's create your object. So I'll be naming this to obj underscore ball. Okay, so after doing that, we'll be adding your event now. So the first event we'll be adding multiple events for this particular object. So the first event that we'll be adding is the create event. Now, regarding the actions that we'll be using into this game, we'll only be using one action. That will be your execute a code. Okay? So let's add your action, execute a code. Then I'll be pasting this code. Okay? So we have your code in here. So we have go is equal to false. So what does this mean? So this particular code will stop the ball from moving at the start of the game. Okay? So once the ball is created onto the room, then it won't be moving. Okay? So we'll be clicking the check to save. Then we'll be proceeding to the next event. The next event that we'll be doing is your step event. Okay, so same. We'll be using the execute code. Okay, so for the step event, guys, we'll be using this code. Okay, so in this code, guys, as you can see, we have a conditional statement, or we have two conditional statements. So the first conditional statement that we have, if go is equals to false, or if the ball is not moving, okay, so what we're going to do now is we'll be getting the location of the bat on the y-axis. Okay, so we'll be binding the location of the bat onto the ball. So using that code, x is equals to obj.x. Okay, this means the location of the bat onto the y-axis. Okay, we'll follow the location of the bat using the x-axis. Okay, so let's say for example, if the ball is already moving, what we're going to do now is we'll be checking. Okay, it will be checking if the ball is already outside the room. So using this parameter or using this conditional statement, we have y is greater than your room height. So let's say for example, if the variable y will have the value greater than the room height, it means that the ball is already outside the room. And if the ball is already outside the room, then we need to restart your game. Okay? So let's proceed. Then the next event that we'll be adding now is the collision with your wall. Okay? So let's add your collision. So collision, then we'll be selecting wall. Again, the action that we'll be using is execute code. Okay, so this is the code that we'll be adding. So we have a function in here. So we have the function move underscore bounce all. Then the parameter that we've used is true. So this function will allow the bouncing of objects, or particularly your ball, within this object. Okay, then we'll check, or we'll click this check to save your changes. Okay, then the next event that we'll be adding is the collision with the brick. Okay, so what will happen if the ball collides with the brick? So this is the action or the code that we'll be using. Okay, so for the moment, these are the codes that we'll be using. Again, so we'll be using the move bounce all. Okay, so it will allow bouncing of objects within your object. And if the ball hits the brick, so we're going to destroy the brick. So as you can see, we have other here. The other refers to the collision object that collides with your ball. So that will be your brick. So we'll be destroying that instance. So basically, once you hit the ball, you want to destroy the brick. Okay? Then we'll click check. Okay, then the next event that we'll be adding is the collision with the bat. So let's add the collision, and we'll be selecting the object bat. Okay? So let's add your source code in here. Okay, so let's add your source code now. So for the collision of the bat, we'll be adding the source code. Okay, so now as you can see, we have multiple lines of source code in here. So what we're going to do here now, so first thing is we have move bounce all. This is the same with what we've added earlier, so it allows the bouncing of objects. Then we'll be declaring a variable dir, which refers to the direction. Okay, then we also have a function in here, point direction, with the following parameters. So basically what this do is it will be creating the angle of direction where the ball will go if it hits the bat. Okay, then we have your motion add. So set the direction of the ball. Okay, so the parameters that we'll be using for the motion add will be the direction that will produce, okay, and the speed of your ball. Okay, so we have here, just click OK in here. So as you can see, these are the events that we'll be having for your ball. So the next thing that we'll be doing now is let's try to use this object. So what we're going to do now is we'll be now creating your room. So let's create a room. Okay. We'll be setting the name of this room. So we'll be using rm underscore game. So rm denotes that this is a room resource. Okay. So after doing that, we'll be changing its speed to 60. Okay. As of the moment, I'll be leaving the width and height by default. So after doing that, I'll be proceeding with objects. So for the objects, first what I'm going to do now is I'll be adding first the wall. Okay, so as you can see, once I add the wall, you'll be seeing that the wall is very small as compared to the game room. So instead of creating multiple or many walls, so what I'll be doing is I'll only be using 3, but I'll be changing its properties. So let's say, for example, in here, let's do that again. I'll be adding a room, okay. I'll zoom it in here. Then I'll place it on the upper left corner. So what I'm going to do now is I'll be changing its size. So to do that, right-click your wall object and select Instant Properties. So for the instance properties, we'll be changing its scale or scale to the y-axis. So I'll be changing the default value from 1 to 30. Okay, and then as you will see, it will be extending the height of your object. So after doing that, I'll be adding the wall for the upper part of the game. Okay, so I'll be placing it, or no, I'll be changing the size of this instance before I move it to its proper place. So instance properties, I'll be changing the scale on the x-axis. I'll be using 40 as the value. Then we'll place it properly. Then after doing that, we'll also be adding our third wall. This is our last wall because we won't be adding a wall below in here. Okay, so right click your object, select its instance properties. We'll be changing the scale to 30. Okay, then we'll be trying to move it onto the right side of your room. So basically, if you drag it around it here, so the wall moves outside the room. So we don't want to do that. So what we're going to do now is to move this properly. So right click your object, okay? Then let's change its position. Now we'll be changing the value for the x-axis. So instead of 608, let's try to change it to 625. Okay, so as you can see, it will be moving onto the rightmost part of your room. So now we already have your walls. So the next thing that we'll be adding now is we'll be adding your bricks. Okay, so it's up to you now how many layers of bricks you want to add. So let's try to add 3 or 4 layers of bricks. Okay, so let's say for the moment, I'll be adding 4 layers of bricks in here. So after adding your bricks onto the room, the next thing that we'll be doing is we'll be adding your bat. So I'll be placing the bat somewhere in here. Okay. Then after adding your bat, we'll be adding your ball. Okay, so before we proceed, I'll just click this check mark. So I forgot to add your sprite. Okay, so let's add the sprite for your ball. Okay, click OK. Then we'll go back into your room. Then we'll be adding your ball now. So we'll be placing your ball above the paddle. Okay. Then for the moment, let's test this. So I'll click the check mark to save the changes. Okay, then let's try to run your game. Okay, so this will be the sample output of your game. So as you can see, your bricks or the brick colors will randomly appear. Okay, then we can also move your player bat using the left and right cursor keys. Let's try to fire up the ball and let's check if the ball hits the brick, will it destroy the brick? Okay, so as you can see, the ball is already bouncing and destroying the bricks that it hits. Okay, so let's wait for the ball to go down. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, the ball already bounces off the bat. Okay, but there are still some bugs in here. So as you've seen, the ball kind of stocks up with the bat. Okay, so this is our initial version. So for the moment, we'll be saving this progress. Okay, so as you can see, once the ball goes in this lower part, it will be restarting the game, or it will be restarting the room. Okay, so as you can see, once the game ends, your brick colors will be randomly changed. So for the moment, let's save this. So after creating the room for our game, so the next thing that we'll be doing is we'll be creating your score box. Okay, so first let's add the sprite that we'll be needing for your score box. So I'll be naming it to SPR score box. Okay, let's load the image that we'll be using. We'll be using this score box. So as you can see, it already has the text for your scores and lives. So we'll click open. Okay, we'll be setting its origin to center. Okay, then we'll click OK. So after doing that, we'll be creating now an object. Okay, so an object that will serve as the controller for the lives, or later object that will serve as the controller for the lives and scores for the game. So for the moment, I'll be naming it to obj underscore control. Then the sprite that I'll be using is the SPR underscore score box. Okay, so next thing that we'll be doing is after assigning the sprite, we'll be adding a create event. Okay, so as I have mentioned earlier, all the actions, or the only action that we'll be using for this game will be to execute a code. Okay, so I'll be adding source code in here. Okay, so this is our source code. So as you can see, we have two functions in here. So draw set age align and draw set color. So this draw set age align is used to align your text to the left. Then draw set color will define the color of your text. Okay, then we'll also be assigning values to these two global variables. We have your score. Our initial value for the score is 0, and the initial value for our lives is 3. Then we'll save these changes. Okay, so the next thing that we'll be doing now is we'll be adding your draw event. So we need to draw now your this object. So to do that, let's create your draw event. Okay, again, we'll be executing source code. So this is the code that we'll be using. So the first code, we have your draw underscore self function will draw the sprite for the score box. Okay, then we have draw text. Okay, will be drawing the text that will correspond to the value of your score, and another text that will correspond to the value of your lives. Then we'll click OK to save those changes. Okay. Now, so we have your object for the control. As of the moment, we'll be leaving this as it is. Okay, so next thing that we'll be doing now is let's try to edit, or let's try to add a code or edit a code on your step event. So we'll be editing the code that we'll be seeing in here. So I'll be pasting a new set of code. Okay, so we'll be updating this. Okay, so this is the new code that we've attached for your step event for your ball. So in here, we'll be checking if the ball is moving. If the ball is moving, again, we'll be checking the location of the bat, and it will be following the ball will be following the location of the bat. So we've changed something in here. So as you can see, we have already added the lives and scores in your object control. Okay, so we'll be utilizing those variables. So in here, we have your conditional statement. So if y is greater than the room height, or we'll be checking if the ball is outside the room. Okay, if the ball is already outside the room, then we'll be deducting 1 to the life of your player. So the lives now from the default of 3 will be deducting 1. Okay, then again, if the lives is less than 1, meaning if the player doesn't have any lives, what we're going to do is we'll be restarting the room. Okay, or else we'll be creating an instance. So let's say, for example, the player still has 1 or 2 lives. Instead of restarting the room, what we're going to do is we'll be creating a new instance, or we'll be creating a new ball using this instance create. So as you can see, the parameters here will define the location of the new instance of the ball. Then the ball that got inside or got outside the room will be destroyed using this function. So as you can see, you have your instance destroyed function. Okay. Click OK and OK. So the next thing that we'll be doing now is we'll also be updating the collision with the brick. Okay, let's update the source code. So as you can see, again, as I've mentioned, we have added the global variables for your lives and scores. So we've updated the step event for the ball. Okay, once that the ball goes outside, okay, it deducts the lives. Now we'll be adding the scoring system now for your game. So once the ball hits the brick, what we're going to do is we'll be adding 10 to the score, meaning every brick that gets destroyed, the player gets a score of 10. We'll click OK to save that. Okay. Then the next thing that we'll be doing now is we'll be adding your background. So onto your resource tree, right click your backgrounds folder, create your background. Okay, so we'll be loading this image. So the file name for the image that we'll be using as your background is stars.png. Let's open this one. Okay, then we'll be renaming this resource to bg_stars. Okay, then we'll click OK. So what we're going to do next now is we'll be updating the room that we have created. So we'll be proceeding to room_game. Okay, so the first thing that we'll be doing now is we'll be changing its background. So let's go to backgrounds. So as you can see, by default, the draw background color is checked because we didn't add any background for your game. So I'll uncheck this one. Okay, then I'll be selecting the foreground image or the background image. Okay, using this button. So by default, we only have one background we've created. That will be the bg_stars. Okay, then as you can see, there will be a background now for your game. So we'll just click the OK to save the changes. Then let's proceed to the next step. So after adding the background for your game or for your room, So we'll be fixing something within your game. So let's try to run a demo of your game. Okay, so in here, as you can see, we already have your background. You have your bat already moving, and you have your ball. As you can see, your bricks are randomly colored. So what we're going to do now is we'll be changing the colors or the randomness of the colors that we've added onto this game. So what we're going to do now is we'll be adding a snippet to fix this issue. So what we're going to do is we'll be fixing one color per level in these bricks. So to do that, what we're going to do is we'll be opening your object for the brick, okay, and we'll be editing its create event. So as of the moment, what we've done is we're placing random colored or random color for your bricks. So I'll be removing this source code and I'll be adding this. Okay, so this conditional statement, okay, will basically change the color of your brick, your layer. So meaning, per single layer will be having a one uniform color only. Okay, so let's try this. Then let's try to run your game again. Okay, so this is the user interface that will be shown. So as you can see, we won't be having random colored bricks onto your game. So as you can see, per layer will have their own color. Now, so let's proceed. So the next step that we'll be doing now is we'll try to fix the problem of your game wherein the ball gets stuck. So we won't be able to 100% fix it, but at least we'll be using a way to reduce that problem. So to do that, what we're going to do now is we'll be creating a new script. So to do that, you can proceed to the resource tree, right click onto scripts and create a script. So once you've once you've created the script, so you'll be prompted with this window. So same as with the window that we're using to add your source code. So the first thing that we'll be doing is we'll be assigning the name for your script. So that will be your SCR move out. So the script that we'll be adding now will be this one. Okay, so we'll be creating a function in here. So, or we'll be basically creating a user-defined function in here. So these are the parameters. Or this is the conditional statement. We have while, then you have your parameters for your function. Okay, so then you'll be having this line. So what does this code do? So the first thing is we have your conditional statement is function to check the movement of the ball 1 pixel at a time to properly detect collision. So this is the purpose of this function. So we'll be defining the new direction of the ball on the onto the X and Y axis using this script. So for the moment, this is the script that we'll be using, then we'll just click on. Okay. So after doing that, what we're going to do now is we'll be editing some of the source code that we already have done. Okay, so we can implement this script that we've added. So the first thing that we'll be doing is we'll be opening our ball object. Okay, then we'll be editing the code for the wall collision. Okay. So as you can see, this is the source code or the initial source code that we've added. So we'll be changing this one. Okay, so we'll be adding some lines of codes in here. Okay, so the first line of code that we have is your variable dir. So we'll be creating a variable. Okay, then we'll be assigning a new value for the direction where the ball bounces off using this one. So we have direction minus 180. Then we'll be sending the dir or the direction as a new parameter to call the function to check the ball movement. Then we'll be allowing the bouncing of objects onto this event. We'll click OK. Okay, so the next procedure now is we'll be editing the code for the collision with the bat. So we'll be editing this. So I'll be pasting this source code. Okay, so as you can see, we have some similar source code in here. We've created a variable direction. As you can see, we have pre-declared this variable because this variable is a local variable and not a global variable. Then we have this function point direction. Okay, we'll be using this one to create the new angle for the direction of the ball once it hits the bat. Then we'll be calling this function, okay, our SCR move out. So to call the function to check the proper ball movement for the collision. So we also have move underscore bounce all, which have the value of true, which allows the bouncing of objects. Okay, then we'll be setting the movement or the motion of your ball. Setting the motion of the ball. Okay. Then we have the last code, which is speed. So we are defining how fast the ball goes. Okay. And we'll click check on this one. Then we'll also be editing the collision with the brick. Okay, so this will be the updated source code that we have in here. Okay, so again, you have to create your dir variable, create an angle of your direction, call the function to check the ball movement to properly detect collision with the bat. Okay, then allow the bouncing of balls. Okay, then we have this with other instance destroy. So I have discussed this earlier. Once the ball hits onto the brick, the other refers to the brick. Okay, it will be destroying that instance, then it will be adding the score 10. Okay, we'll click that. Okay, so after doing that, we'll be proceeding to the next part. Now the next part that we'll be doing is we'll be adding the title, sprite, and the start sprite. Now, so to do that, first thing that we'll be adding is the sprite for the title. Okay, so we'll be loading the sprite. So this is the sprite that we'll be using as your title. Okay, just click open. Then we'll be leaving its origin to center. Then we'll click OK. Then we'll be adding the next sprite. So SPR underscore start. So we'll be adding the start button. Okay, so this is your start or your play button. So we'll be using this sprite, but the origin will, instead of using 0, 0 or a center, will be changing the values to 76 and negative 50. Will be used, or you can use the origin to place your sprite within the room properly. So I'll be using this one to manipulate the placement of your play button or your start button into the game. Then we'll click OK. Then the next procedure that we'll be doing is we'll be creating your next object. So we'll be creating an object, okay, for the intro of the game. So we'll be placing this intro, or we'll be using this intro to display the title of the game, okay, to display the play button or the start button, and also the high score. So let's name this to obj control. Okay, then I'll be assigning the sprite SPR start for this object. Okay, so next thing that I'll be doing now is I'll be creating a create event. Okay, then again we'll be executing a code. Then we'll be adding the source code. Okay, so what is the source code? So we have line number 1, we have alpha. Alpha also means as opacity. So we'll be using alpha to set the opacity or the transparency of a particular object within your GameMaker. So if you want your object to be invisible, we'll be assigning a value of 0. If you want your object to be visible, then we'll be assigning a value of 1. Next, we have ini underscore open. So this is a function that will be opening your ini files. So what are ini files? Ini files are used to store small amount of data within your game. So let's say you want to store the data or your high score within your game, we'll be using these ini files to store them. So the good thing with using ini files is even though you close the game, it will be storing the game or will be storing the high score into a file. So meaning even if you close or even if you open, close, or open again, close your game, it won't be deleting your high score. Okay, then we'll also be creating a variable that will be reading the score within or the high score within the ini file. So after reading the score, okay, it will be closing all the ini files that are opened. Then it will be using or we will be using a function drawSet HAlign, okay, to align the text to center, and drawSet color to set the text color to white. So what is the text that will be printing now? We'll be printing the high score from the score.ini file. Okay. We'll click OK. Then the next step that we'll be doing is we'll be creating a draw event. So the draw event will be using this draw event to basically draw our object. Okay. So this is the source code that we'll be using. Okay. So now we have your draw self. So this is used to draw your object. We have your draw sprite. So you can define here what sprite you want to draw and the location of the sprite where you want it to draw. Then we also have draw text. So we'll be using this draw text to define the location or to draw the high score within your object. So we also have your set alpha, draw rectangle, and set alpha. We are using this lines of code to basically create a simple fade in animation. Okay. Then we'll just click OK to save this. Then the next thing that we'll be doing is we'll be adding a mouse event. So we'll be using a left press. So what we're going to do now, so you can see we've loaded the image start. So meaning this object should be clickable. So that will be the event that we'll be using. Left button. Okay. So let's just update that. Delete this one. We'll be adding a left pressed as the event. Okay. So once the button is pressed, okay, we'll be executing something. So let's execute the code. Okay. Then this is the code that will be setting. Okay, so first line, if alpha is equals to 0, we'll be checking if the object intro is not visible. If it's not visible, it will be running alarm 0. So we'll be defining alarm 0 after creating this action. So then it will be setting the initial score 0 and the initial lives to 3. Okay. So the next thing that we'll be doing now is we'll be adding the alarm. So let's say for example, the player clicks onto the start button. As you can see, we've defined an alarm. So what is the alarm that we'll be using? Alarm 0. So it will be executing the code that we'll be adding in here. So what is that code? So that will be this one. Okay, so let's say for example, okay, we have the first line in here, alpha is equals to alpha plus alpha is equal to or plus equal alpha 0.05. So to add value to your alpha. So if your alpha is greater than 0 or the visibility is greater than 1 or greater than 1, okay, we'll be checking if the alpha value is greater than 1. If it's greater than 1, then we'll be jumping to your game room. So we have this function in here, room go to room game, meaning we'll be jumping the room that we are in. So basically, as of the moment, we don't have a second room, but later we'll be creating it for this one to function. Okay, just click OK. Now, the next step is we'll just click OK. So we'll be letting this obj intro as it is for the moment. Then the next thing that we'll be doing now is we'll be creating our second room. So as you can see, in the object intro, we've defined that we'll be jumping rooms. Okay, so we'll be jumping rooms using this room go to. So to do that, before you can jump into another room, make sure that you have at least 2 rooms that exist within your game. So what we're going to do now is we'll be creating a new room, we'll be proceeding to settings, then we'll be naming this to rm_intro. Okay, so we'll leave this default as of the moment. So what we're going to do now is when you're creating multiple rooms into GameMaker, the first room that is in the list will be the one that is going to be displayed. Okay, so what you want to do now is you want to make sure that room intro is on the first of the list. That once you run the game, this is the first room that will be displayed. Okay, so let's try to see. As of the moment, guys, we don't have anything that is or any object or any instance that we have into this room. It's a blank room. So what I did is just change the name, okay, from the default to room_intro. Click OK. Then let's try to run your game. So as you can see, the output will look something like this. As I have mentioned, the first room that you have in the rooms list will be the one displayed. So as you can see, we didn't add any content. So meaning, it won't be displaying anything. Okay? Okay, so after arranging the correct sequence for the rooms that we have, the next thing that we'll be doing now is we'll be adding the scoreboard for your room game. So let's proceed to objects. Okay, then we'll be selecting our control. So we'll be placing it on the middle upper part of your game. So I'll be changing its position, change its y-axis from 32 to 18. Okay, then click OK. Then we'll also be adding now the contents for your room intro. So we'll be adding your obj intro. I'll be placing your play button somewhere in here. Okay, then let's try to run your game and let's see the output. So in here we have this output. So as you can see, we have used the GML to add the title. So you can see that, or we can go back to obj intro draw. Okay, so we have a code in here to draw sprite. So it draw the sprite for SPR title. Okay, and we'll also be drawing a text for the high score. So your output should look something like this. So this is your high score. The default value as of the moment is 0. So we'll be adding more codes to basically save the data for your high score. So you click play. Okay, then let's check if we'll be redirected onto the room game. So okay, so that will be our simple transition to the main game room. So let's play. Okay, so as you can see, we'll also be seeing our score on the upper part of our game. So your score box monitors the scores and the lives that you have for the game. Okay, so once the ball goes out the game, so the lives will be reduced to, or will be reduced by 1. Okay. Now, so that is your game now. Okay. So we'll be proceeding to the next part. So for the next part, what we're going to do now is we'll be editing our object control. Okay, so we'll be editing its create event. We'll be adding 2 variables in here. So that will be the go variable and the alpha. So the go variable is used for the ball movement, and alpha is the variable for visibility. So after doing that, what's So the next step will be creating a step event. Okay, so we'll be adding our action. So the code that we'll be using for this one is this. Okay, so what's the purpose of this code for your step event? So let's say we'll be checking if the ball is moving. So if the ball is not moving, okay, then we'll be adding alpha value. So we'll check if the game is not over yet. Okay, if the game is already over, okay, so what will happen? So we'll be opening your score.ini. So as I have mentioned earlier, we'll be using this score.ini to store your high score. Now to do that, what we're going to do now is once you open the score.ini, we'll be comparing the high score. If the current high score is the highest, then it will just close the score.ini. Or if the new score is the highest, then it will be writing down it as a new score. Okay? Then we also have the else part in here. Okay, so we'll be checking if there are no bricks onto the game. So let's say for example, your player will still have lives, but there are no bricks available onto the game. So what will happen? We need to restart the game. So once we restart the game, the scores and the lives will remain, but the blocks will go back. So for the player can add additional scores to his current score. Okay, so we'll just click OK. Then we'll be also adding codes for the draw event. Okay, so below in here we'll be adding the source codes. Okay, so draw set alpha, so used to create a simple animation for the fade in. Okay, we'll just click OK to save this. Okay, then we'll also be changing the depth for your OBJ control. So we'll be setting its depth to -1000. So the lower the value, the higher in the stack this object gets drawn within your game. Okay, so just click OK. Then the last part that we'll be doing now is we'll be editing something in your ball object. So what we're going to do now is we'll be editing its step. So we'll be changing the source code that we have in here. So I'll be pasting this source code. Okay, so again, so first is we'll check if the ball is moving. So if the ball is moving, um, if the ball is not moving, if the ball is not moving, so the ball will just follow the position and location of the object. But or else it will be checking if the y is greater than the room height. So we'll be checking if the ball is already outside the room. If the ball is already outside the room, what we're going to do now is we'll be deducting 1 to the lives of the player that we have. Then we'll be having a conditional statement to check whether the life is less than 1. So if lives is less than 1, so what will happen is with object control, will stop moving. Okay, so basically this go variable is used for the ball to move. Okay, so we'll be setting it to false. Then what will happen is it will be creating a new instance of the ball and will be destroying the ball or the instance of the ball that got out onto the game. So let's try to run your game now. Okay. So now this is your game. So as you can see, we have the high score as 0. So let's play it. Okay, so let's try to add some scores. Okay, so let's say 20. Let's check now if the game can record the score that we have. So we have 40. Okay, so now, as you can see, we have your high score, that is 50. And instead of the room just restarting, once the player, or once the game is over, it will be redirecting again onto the screen intro. Okay, so let's try to play it again. Now, so this is the basically a basic version of your Breakout game. So if you want to improve this, then it's up to you. All these steps that you'll be needing to recreate this game, I'll be providing them in the additional resources in my Edmodo post, and kindly check the description of this video for the additional resources that I'll be providing you. I'll also be attaching the folder of the assets that I have used for this game on the link below. Alright? So, last 2 bricks. Let's check what will happen. Oh, yeah. Okay, so as you can see now, this is your high score.